We are very happy to have Moitza and I here with us today, and I'm sorry to go on so long with all my housekeeping matters, but we were happy to have Moitza last December. She was part of a 3-person panel that was talking about some of the behind-the-scenes practical issues that are involved in title companies handling transactions to meet CFPB requirements, keep all the plates spinning until the thing actually successfully closes. And she's going to help us today understand some of the things that she focuses on. She coordinates escrow. She's the Illinois escrow coordinator for First American. She just achieved her 20-year anniversary. She's only 29, so you started at age 9. Over the years, she's cultivated her industry knowledge by holding various positions: construction officer, closing officer, branch manager, field manager. In 2006, she was promoted to her current role of Illinois State Escrow Lead. And as that state escrow advisor, she oversees the escrow processes throughout the state of Illinois, including the development of new closing practices and procedures in relation to changes in regulation, compliance. Compliance has got to be a big part of your fun job. Underwriting practices, software technology to comply with TRID requirements and the new forms and all that. Empowering the First American escrow team in Illinois is her daily focus. So she's trying to make the closing experience with her company pleasant, quick, and accurate. We have Sue not only here as a recording coordinator, we have Catherine Murphy-Gonzalez in the back of the room. We have several people from First American. Thank you for coming and joining us today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Moitza Anaya.
Well, good morning, everyone. So let me ask, how many of you practice in Cook County? City of Chicago? How about Collier County? Boy, in Chicago, we didn't get a lot of hands there. I wonder why. So what I'd like to do this morning is really talk about some of the challenges that we face as title companies when we assist in obtaining stamps. And what are some of the obstacles that we run into throughout the process. And I'm sure many of you notice an exception similar to this you'll see here on my presentation, raised on a commitment in Schedule B. And many municipalities, as we know, have their own transfer requirements, such as a final water meter reading, a property inspection. At-large title companies will assist notifying all the closing parties that there may be municipal transfer requirements by raising this type of exception on a commitment. Although at closing, we really generally focus only on the municipal requirements that affect the recordability of the deed. For example, that village transfer stamp, which needs to be affixed to the deed so the county will record it. Those are the things that we'll focus on. Now, many title companies, including First American, maintain a municipality transfer requirements list. Although these lists may not be all-inclusive at any given time because a municipality may change its requirements unbeknownst to us at any time. So for us at First American Title, we do keep this on our customer website. Information will include contact information for each municipality, the known transfer requirements along with those requirements themselves, including costs for municipal stamps. And although when you are representing as the buyer's attorney, you may choose to ensure all the municipal transfer requirements are met, the only time we, again, as a title company, will review any of those municipal requirements, again, other than those affecting the recordability of the deed, is when we are in a situation where we're acting as the agent for a new lender and their closing instructions are advising that we need to obtain something on their behalf. So otherwise, we just don't get involved. And if by chance you wanted a listing, I believe Kathy has some with her as well today, so if you wanted to just get a paper copy, she's got them. But what I really wanted to do today was just focus on some of the larger cities the majority of us as title companies obtain here in Chicago Metro. And again, those challenges that we encounter. I'm going to start really with Aurora and just go through the specific things that are needed for the city of Aurora. Their real estate transfer declaration, the statement of open accounts, which is their, for example, their water bill, it includes that information on there, and then either a copy of the P-tax or now MyDeck. And of course, if you have a situation where the purchase price is over $1 million, it's non-residential property, they are also looking for those 203A. So again, if these things aren't brought to closing, right away when we try to go get those stamps after closing, we're halted there and that recording process takes longer. But one of the other things that we do encounter with the city of Aurora when you're looking at their statement of open accounts here, the anticipated closing date that they list here, it's very important that we close by that date. So if we close afterwards, the City of Aurora will stop us from being able to obtain their stamp. Another interesting thing with the City of Aurora is that the buyer information on the statement of open accounts has to match to the P-tax. So again, when it doesn't match, they stop us from being able to obtain that stamp. So, and for those that don't know, I have Sue with me to keep me on point so that I don't misspeak in any way. She is our recording manager in Chicago Metro, so at First American, so she definitely has run into just about any scenario you could imagine. So I'm like, come with me here and keep me legal, or keep me accurate, I should say. Looking, yes?
When, I always was curious, when do you actually record? How quickly do you record?
Well, Alta's best practices now require that we record within 2 days.
Wojciech, could you repeat the question, please? We're recording
Absolutely.
today.
I'm assuming everybody can hear me, correct? I tend to be kind of...
Yeah, but the people watching the video won't be able to hear the question.
Sure. The question was, how soon after closing do we record? And the answer is, Alta's best practices now require that documents are sent for recording within 2 business days of, let's say, disbursement. In Illinois, we're a table funding state. So for us, we disperse, and that's how we complete our closing transactions. If you were on the West Coast, or if you worked in another state where they escrow close, they will make sure they record documents before they finish disbursement. But within 2 business days is what Alta's best practices require. So many lenders on their closing instructions specifically state that as the title company, as their settlement agent, that we must follow Alta's best practices. So,
Do you also have to record the original document, or is there e-filing now? Has that changed?
it's a really good question. And specifically, do we have to record originals? Most counties here in Northern Illinois allow us to record copies if needed. Obviously, to protect everybody's best interest, we'd like to see the original signatures. We know that there is so much various types of fraud out there, and it's so easy to, with today's electronic technology, be able to alter things. So we'd like to see the original, just again, to protect everybody. But all counties, I would say, in Northern Illinois, except Will, correct, Sue? She's nodding yes. So all counties except Will up here in Northern Illinois will allow us to record a copy if needed. Now, again, as hopefully many of you have received, hopefully from your underwriter or some title partner you have. I know at First American we sent out, I believe it was earlier this year, for example, Cook County, if you're not recording an original, you now have an affidavit that you need to attach. And it's specific as to the form. So you might want to check with each county on that. The second part of your question was, what about e-filing? And Cook County did start a pilot on e-recording deeds. I really don't know at large with the title industry how many have joined that program or not. I know we at First American do some electronic recording. It all depends on the specifics of that transaction. But we are focused, at least I can now, this I have to speak specific to First American. We're focused more and more on trying to e-record as much as possible. It just protects everybody's interest that much sooner. But with it comes a lot of other challenges, because it's so much easier to reject something when all you're doing is clicking a button versus filling out a form and sending some, physical document back. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few moments. Okay, moving on, and I was talking about Bolingbrook. These are their requirements, and again, it's amazing how you might think that a copy of a deed might be sufficient, but they give us a hard time if we're not there with the original deed to obtain the stamp in this case. So the big thing with the Bolingbrook is that they also have a due date there, and their letter specifically states that they will honor this letter for a period of 5 days from the date of that letter. So all of these collar municipal, or I should say cities that I'm talking about, they all very clearly state on these, say, water bill type documents or statements of open account type documents, or in this case Bolingbrook, they call it their clearance letter. They're very specific on these dates, and if we don't meet those dates when we go to purchase the stamps, again, we're halted. And in some cases, they require us to go through a whole new process of applying and filling out all of the forms that we looked at here, that they make us send all of that again. Sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility, but these are the kinds of things that delay us from meeting Alta's best practices. Moving forward, Joliet, again, these are the various requirements they have. Interestingly enough, again, for City of Joliet, if you're dealing with new construction, they require that this additional form be filled out above and beyond all of the other documentation. They as well, I'd say our biggest challenge, again, like with all of the others, it's making sure that final water bill, in their case, it needs to be dated within, we need to close within 4 days of the meter reading on their water letter. So again, if we're closing afterwards, if we're dispersing afterwards, we're potentially running into an expiration issue and having a hard time then obtain the stamp. And of course, believe me, we sympathize with everyone, let me just say, because it's difficult that close to closing, you're still trying to run out and get that and then take care of everything else you need to within your practice. But we just wanted to share those are the things that we come across. And then with Naperville, again, these are their requirements, and they also have a due date on their statement of open accounts. So you want to just make sure, again, that you're closing with paying attention to that expiration date, that we're catching that. I know our closers are trained also to be looking for that, because again, none of us want to have to deal with a post-closing call where we're saying we have a recording issue with not being able to record the deed because we can't obtain the stamp. So, but what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on is the city of Chicago. So for those that, were kind of like, well, I kind of touched Chicago, hopefully you'll feel a little bit more comfortable after today. City of Chicago, they have 3 requirements so that we can obtain the stamp that needs to be affixed to the deed. A paid sewer water certificate, or what the city calls the full payment certificate, the FPC is what they acronym that. There's also a certificate of zoning compliance for buildings containing 1 to 5 dwelling units that are not condominiums or co-ops. And then the third item is the declaration must be created online within the MyDeck system. So I'm going to talk about the FPC first. Interestingly enough, Chicago requires a new and unique water cert be presented for each individual stamp that is affixed to a deed, whether the deed is considered exempt or not, no matter if the deed is a warranty deed, a quitclaim deed, or any other type. The only exception to this scenario would be where there are multiple deeds that fall under what is called like a parent deed, the city calls the parent deed. And that type of scenario would be where you have heirs to an estate, where the individual heirs may live in different states, so it's easier to have each heir sign and have notarized a separate deed to the buyer. In that type of situation, one deed would be considered the parent deed, the other deeds would fall under that. In all other instances, each completed FPC may only be used in conjunction with one deed. There is no give or take here with the city. One FPC, one deed. I could say definitely at First American, and I'm sure all of us as title companies could say we've run into scenarios where there are back-to-back deeds recorded on a transaction. And the first thing I'd like to recommend is if you did have that type of a situation, please reach out to your title officer, your title underwriter, or who you work with, because in some instances, we're just not able to comply with the situation of that closing and do that closing. And there's nothing worse than getting to the closing table and now we're all that much further frustrated. If we know about it up front, we can maybe reach out to the appropriate parties to confirm that everything will meet everyone's requirements, especially if there's a new lender involved in any part of that transaction. But in the case where we are able to close a transaction where there are multiple buyers, for example, if A is selling to B, B is then selling to C, and we're doing that all through, let's say, closings in conjunction with each other, each of those deeds will require its own FPC. Now, the other part of this is that the city now requires all FPC orders be placed online in their system. Now, many title companies, and I even know many attorneys' offices, have their own login to the FPC site and order their own water certs. Now, while others still go to the city counter. Now, when you do go to the city, to their counter, to their water counter to order the FPC, what they're actually doing is placing that order on your behalf online. So it's still existing in the online system. And the reason is I'm bringing this up because in all scenarios, only the person that placed the order can pay for that order. So unlike in the past where you could order your own water cert but come to closing and through the closing pay for that water? Well, if you ordered the water yourself, whether you did it through your own online account or you did it by going to the city, in both those instances, we can't pay that through the closing. So that actually needs to be already in a paid status just before we're able to disperse. I know there are some attorneys that literally wait to the closing when they see it's gonna go, then they just go online into their own account. I know many of us have computers available for attorneys to use, and then they just go online and pay it right then and there. And then what we do in those instances, we just add it as a line item on the settlement statement as a reimbursement, whether it's to your office or to whoever's account it was paid from. But what I wanted to share is that in all instances, don't assume that the balance you see listed on a preliminary certificate is the final balance. So the city updates these orders daily, and the final amounts can change up to and including on the day of closing. So I can say at First American, any FPCs that are ordered through us, we're constantly tracking them, and when we see on the day of closing, Sue's nodding her head up and down, because this is what her and her team do. I'm a part of the many things they do, but on the day of settlement, we are going back into the FPC system and verifying all these amounts are due. Because again, none of us want to have a post-closing issue come up. And not only are we verifying that this is the final amount due for this specific date, but then as soon as that closing occurs and the disbursement's taken place, our closers are actually reaching right back out to Sue and her team that we pay that online balance that very same day, because we don't want to risk having any additional monies due. So something to keep in mind if you're doing them yourself is you might want to double check those amounts at the time of closing, because they could still change. So one last thing on the FPCs is that they are always, or I should say they are valid until that expiration date listed on the FPC. This at least has gotten a little better with the online system versus the old day of what's a metered account or a non-metered account, and this one was good for 60 days, this one was good to the due date, So now they've at least made that a little bit easier for all of us to follow. They're good so we must disperse by that expiration date. Otherwise, a new one needs to be ordered and again paid at the time of closing, by the time of closing. Now, looking at the zoning certification process for the city, just to give you, in case you were curious, single-family zoning applications can usually be processed and approved by the city within 1 to 2 business days. Townhomes are considered a single-family residence. You are required to obtain a zoning certification. If you have a 2 to 5 dwelling unit, those applications right now are taking a minimum from 5 to 7 business days to process. Now, on the multi-unit let's say properties, it is important that you know the number of dwelling units, the exact location of each unit. For example, first floor or first floor front, first floor back. The city is looking for all of those specific things, otherwise they might reject it, which then prohibits us from being able to obtain the stamp. Now, if the zoning application doesn't match the city's records as to the number and location of the units on the property, the application will be denied. And the zoning application, if it's denied, your options are either to apply for a new one. You could provide the city of Chicago the issued permit that maybe your client might still have, confirming the number of dwelling units when they purchased. I know, right? We can't get them to find their last settlement statement. I know. I'm just putting it out there. But there is also the option of the freedom of information. That request can be submitted to the Department of Buildings requesting that information. Unfortunately, that can take 4 to 6 weeks. But these are the things. And once obtained, the good news, on a positive note, because those that know me will say I'm always looking for those positive silver linings. The good news is that once we have an accepted zoning certificate or one that's certified by the city, they're valid for a full year, and they may be used in conjunction with multiple deeds. So unlike the FPC that's 1 for 1, this one you can use across the board for as many transactions as needed. First American Title, along with I'm sure all of the other underwriters, we can obtain any of these items for you. You can either go on our website, or by all means you can reach out to Kathy at any time, and she can forward you that paperwork if you were interested. But now what I'd like to do is really talk about MyDeck. So MyDeck, as many of you know, it's an online application provided by the Illinois Department of Revenue. It's to electronically file property tax declarations, And any of us can apply and obtain our own login, individuals, law firms, settlement agencies, and of course, title companies. We can not only file the transfer tax declaration online, but then you can view it once it's already created. And then what has been a nice benefit as well is you can track the status of the recording. So it's an easy way to see exactly when it's recorded and get that recording information. And of course, any corrections are made right through the MyDeck system. And those of us that have the permissions also obtain our stamps that way. So you'll see that a lot of the title companies do. So you can see here a lot of counties. As a matter of fact, I was just on the website yesterday. There's actually a lot more counties than what I'm listing. I just focused more on what we tend to see or work with here in Northern Illinois. Yes?
Might be a little off topic, but Will, I know, Will is not on this list. And so when you go to get their stamps, you have to do a P-tax form. I thought I saw somewhere where the fill-in P-tax form is being discontinued.
It is for the counties where MyDeck is available. I double-checked that as well yesterday afternoon. At least that's what it specifically states, because I was double-checking that I remembered the information for the 203A. So that's why I was on there. But it specifically still states that the electronic fillable form is still available, for example, in Will County. But in all of these counties, and like I said, I know Jackson is on the list, Tazewell's here. There's several others. I mean, this is not the all-inclusive list. All of those no longer allow a fillable form.
No problem.
Good question, thank you. But what's interesting is out of these that are allowed to use MyDeck, Cook County requires all of their transfer declarations be prepared through MyDeck. If you went in with a P-tax form to their counter, the Recorder's County and Cook County, they'd point you to the computer, which I believe is several floors up from their desk, saying you could fill the form online and come back downstairs with your check and that MyDeck number. So I want to take a few more minutes now and just talk about the MyDeck system. So as I said, Cook County won't record a deed without an attested MyDeck declaration. So looking at the MyDeck system, if you haven't yet, it really is very easy to obtain a login to the account. You could do so right there. And then once you have your login information, this is where you would go to log in. And once you're in the system, what's really nice here in the bottom left-hand portion, there's this first one, it says help using MyDeck. It's a really good tutorial on how to maneuver through MyDeck. If you haven't yet, I will say they did that very well. And then if you did, for whatever reason, need to reach out, whether it's to the site developers or just to the team overseeing this website, there is also contact information for the state there. But once I go ahead, oh yeah, there you go, help using MyDeck. But to start a new application, you would click here on the upper right-hand corner to add a new declaration. And once you open up Add a New Declaration, you come to this property screen, and you enter the county and you enter a PIN number. And once you enter the 2, automatically a property address will pull up. It's pulling from the various assessor's office. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but I'd like to point out, if the address doesn't match exactly to what you think, I know we struggle with this, but to what you think will be required on your deed, or let's say what the lender will require on their mortgage documents, because again, it all needs to sync up together. There is this button here on the right that allows you to update the property. Please go ahead and do so. And I'm going to come back to why in just a little bit, but that's where that check mark box is, and it is important. They catch us every time on this. But what I'd like to do is just looking now, when you do finally get past that screen, you will see here there's several different tabs available depending on, again, if it's Cook County, if you're working with the city of Chicago. Sometimes those additional tabs on the top will be apparent, sometimes they won't. But what is nice about the way the system was built is that you can maneuver through the system very nicely, that it literally, once you finish with one screen, it pushes you right, it just allows you to keep going right to the next. You don't actually have to click on every one of those tabs. It'll move it right through for you. And all of the information, once you enter, for example, the legal description or the PIN number, it will transfer that data to the various necessary forms, meaning the Cook County DAC or the City of Chicago's DAC. So ultimately, what do title companies need at closing? Let's say if you are preparing a declaration on behalf of your client, is that DAC number. We do not need all of the various pages. Definitely if it's Chicago and it, you know, we've got multiple pages for the 7750 and then the Cook County DAC and the 2-page P-tax, you know, the state DAC. We don't need all of it. We really just need that declaration number because we actually need to go into the system ourselves at that point and then accept the DAC. That's one of the steps we need to do before we can go ahead and purchase, you know, complete what we need to do in the system and then purchase the stamps. So that's the MyDeck system. Now, as of last year, Chicago passed the Uniform Revenue Procedures Ordinance, ruling number 5, which stated that Chicago transfer stamps must be paid online through MyDeck. So, and if they aren't paid timely, additional penalties and interest may accrue. So looking here at the MyDeck system, what they're really looking for at that point is when we go to purchase stamps for City of Chicago and then we forward all of those documents to the City of Chicago, they're looking to see here under the city form tab, section 4.5, what is the date there, the date of transfer? And they're looking to see, is it, at this time, they're giving us a 7 calendar day leeway. And if stamps are not purchased within that 7th calendar day, they are accruing penalties and interest. And I will say, First American Title, as of last year, we paid in excess of $50,000 in penalties. And I can say that I know that the other underwriters and companies have as well, because we just recently met with the City of Chicago trying to work with them on how we can make this work for everybody. So I know we're all facing these struggles with them. And what I'd like to do is now, before I open this up for more questions, is just talk about what are some of the reasons that we're not purchasing our stamps on time. Because again, we're all trying to meet well, I'd like to hope we're all trying to meet Alta's best practices and record in 2 days, or at least get it to the county within 2 days. Number one, I remember I mentioned that property address and how I showed you there was that little checkbox. Picture what happens in our world. Closing takes place on Thursday. So Sue and her team, at least at First American, we are doing what we need to, because again, it didn't fund to the end of Thursday evening. So by Friday, we are finalizing our package and getting that off to the city. Now, that was Friday. We got it to the city, and Saturday, so we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're not working at the city. And by chance, Monday was a holiday. Yeah, that happens once in a while. So now we get to Tuesday. If we're lucky, the city's looked at the MyDeck by Tuesday. Realistically, they're probably looking at it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, a few days thereafter, right? Because if you look at public records or the date, they're not to date in the city, or I should say at Cook County. I mean, not that anybody is 100%, but they're a little behind. So what we are seeing with Cook County is if the address on the MyDeck doesn't match 100% to the deed, and that includes directions, the directionals of north, south, east, southwest versus just south, and suffixes, drive, avenue, street, place. If it doesn't match 100%, the city rejects that MyDeck. We think no big deal, we can add that, right? But one of the ways they built the system is, in order for us to be able to update the MyDeck, we need to unpurchase our stamp, make the correction, and repurchase it. But guess what? I'm at 9 days. City doesn't take into account the fact that they had it for a few days, or that there were weekends, or that there are holidays. In their minds, it's after 7 calendar days. They are now adding a 5% penalty plus interest. That's how technical this has become in our worlds as title companies. You could see why we just met with the City of Chicago recently. Yes, ma'am.
When you say the suffix has to be exactly, do you mean DR versus drive or drive versus place?
Sue is saying that drive versus DR is acceptable. Thank you. Yes. Nope, it's rejected.
Can you just leave it off entirely?
Oh, can you leave it off? I'm sorry, I got to get better at that. Can you just leave off that suffix altogether? Just, no, they will reject it.
Every time I go on to use that. Sorry, every time I go on to use my deck, it's always asking me to validate the address. And I get it for the property, but does anybody know if there is a way to validate your own address? Mine pops up, as a preparer, but every time I go on, it's asking me to validate that address. It's been validated.
It keeps going back to the website to again double check that it matches with the assessor.
But it's my address for the preparer. It has nothing to do with it. So
There's that
I'm not doing
contact
something
us.
right. Yes.
We were fortunate that when they rolled out My Deck, this version, we were asked as title companies to come in, and we spent a full day going, working in the test site, you could say, and going through examples, and we gave them a lot of feedback. For example, why does the full legal description have to be copied into My Deck? Why can't we just attach a legal? We gave them all of these things, and this is where we're at. Unfortunately, yeah, we have made the suggestion and don't maintain the site. So this is one of the reasons we have those penalties come back to us. Another reason, my other favorite, the buyer's names. Moitza Anaya, but my deed said Moitza J. Anaya. The city is very quick that if it is not 100% exact, if it's Moitza Anaya and Roy Anaya, my wonderful husband, but now my PTAC, my deck only had the one name, it's rejected. If it's a living trust, the Moitza Anaya Living Trust under a trust agreement, 123, dated, right, January 1st, 2017. If I just said Moitza Anaya Trust, they will reject it. So all those dates then start adding where we're again in the position where now when we repurchase the stamp, we're paying penalties. And this is an automatic calculation within the system. This isn't something that we can manually try to opt out of. Yes?
Can you, as a title company, make those adjustments when you go into the My Deck, if it says Moitza J. Trust as opposed to putting trustee?
Yep, and believe me, we do that that's part of once we accept the deck, is once you've submitted it, and that's why we ask for that declaration number, because we need to pull it up. That's part of what I can definitely say at First American Title, we're obviously, we're a risk company. We know we're going to pay claims, but we don't want to pay claims on the known risks, right? It's on the unknown. So yes, we are very diligent in going back after the fact. I mean, before we purchase the stamp, again, within that 24-hour window, we're going into the My Decks and we are going line by line, double checking all of these types of things to avoid those claims. I just wanted to share with you some of what we're seeing, what we're facing, if it was something that you could find helpful to your practice, especially if you have a deed that you're going to be recording on your own at some point, because you could be facing then those same penalties individually. So moving forward, zoning certs. So I can say back in the day when I was closing a lot more than I do today, but back in the day, I used to, if somebody inadvertently forgot, oh, that's right, I needed a zoning, this is Chicago. I used to say, what are we gonna zone it as? A single family residence, is it multi-unit? And if they said, oh no, it's a single family, I would just order those at the table, right? They're always gonna zone at least as a single family. Keep in mind now, we're running into those dates that if for some reason they don't get that zoning to us within 2 days, there's one of the other ordinances in the city of Chicago doesn't allow us to obtain and purchase the stamp until we have a certified zoning in hand. So that 9-day clock can easily become 11, 12 days, especially if now I'm going into 2 weekends. So again, those penalties automatically start accruing. But the other interesting thing that Sue and I were talking the other day that we're seeing more and more of on the multi-dwelling, again, the 2 to 5 that still falls under a zoning certification requirement, get this. So let's say you zone it as a 3-unit And then the city back in the day would come back to whoever ordered it and say, oh, you know what? We're not seeing it as a 3 unit, it's just a 2. And you're like, oh my God, did I say 3? I meant to say 2. Just change it, let's get it done. They won't allow that anymore. Now, if it's not zoned as a 3, and you say, oh, that was an accident, I meant to say 2, they're gonna say, okay, here you go, fill out a new form, and we need another $120. So we've been seeing that recently with the city. So again, now you're going into waiting to get the monies or however you're handling that. So again, the clock just keeps on ticking. And of course, water certs. Without a doubt, again, the moment that water cert's expired, if we didn't purchase the stamp on time, matching with that date, the city's catching that and those penalties are accruing. Sorry, I'm finishing on such a positive note, aren't I? I do that well. So that really concludes the things I wanted to share with everyone today and open it up for more questions. And I'll ask Sue to come up here and just join me. Come on, Sue. I will say, if you have any questions that come to mind, or you ever run into a specific closing transaction that you're trying to work through, whether it's, obviously I will say we would prefer it be with First American Title, but with any scenario, Sue is a fountain of knowledge. Over the years, she's encountered many situations and worked with the city and others to try to resolve things. You're always welcome to reach out to her and her team. Email address is here. Also, you could get it from Kathy anytime in the future. But now we'll just ask questions, and yes, starting here.
One of the harder points I find on the My Deck is the square footage, particularly of the condos. The square footage of a single-family home, especially if it's Cook County, you can usually find on the assessor's site. But do you have any thoughts as to how to, because half the time the realtors don't even know what the square footage
and
is.
it's on the MLS system more often than not. They might not, somewhere they got it on the MLS system. So I know when I was closing, I would, because that I always even needed on the PTX form, I would always just in my mind right away find a realtor or call their office and just try to get it from there. Or in some cases, Sue, do some of the assessors have any?
Some of them.
She said some of them.
Some of them.
So that's another way to try to get it. But, and you're right, a lot of the realtors don't know, but it's in their system. Somebody entered it. So I just asked them to pull up their listing real quick for me. I'm sorry, before, I had a question here. Yes, Mary?
When I close in Naperville, which is a buyer's tax, a lot of times it seems like some of the title companies actually go get the stamp. Is that common? One of the title companies does that.
We
for the
do.
buyer.
First American obtains Naperville stamps.
Do you obtain any other stamps?
We do. We have our municipal transfer listing that Kathy has, and it's listed there which ones we obtain.
For buyers and sellers?
For buyers and sellers. Yep. If we say we get stamps for that municipality, it doesn't matter who's paying for it. We just make sure that we have the right clearance at hand so that we don't run into any recording delays. Yes, sir.
Have you ever had a My Deck kicked back for an incorrect square footage of a condo or anything like that?
No, that's not common.
Okay.
Yay. See, positive news.
You mentioned the collar counties are starting to go toward the My Deck. Is there a hard and fast deadline yet on when, like, let's say DuPage or Lake are going to switch over?
We haven't heard of anything where they're going to make it a requirement.
Oh, okay.
Because that was that Chicago ruling that I mentioned that went into effect January of 2016. They needed to pass that ordinance to make it a requirement that you could only use the My Deck system, and we're not hearing that yet for the other counties. Right, Sue?
Correct.
I can say, as more and more counties focus on e-recording, and again, I apologize, I don't recall the case, some of you may, that now we really are in the position that we can't record mortgages without the deed going of record. So in those situations, if it was on our refinances, it's very easy to or I should say we're in an easier position to e-record because the mortgages, most counties already have that linked. The deeds is what's holding back. A lot of the counties aren't able to e-record deeds because how do you pay those stamps online? I think With my deck now, that's what's able now to give Cook County that opportunity. We're just getting into that as well here at First American to e-record those deeds. But, and now I'm hearing also downstate, like in St. Clair, Madison County, they're starting to have conversations about paying stamps online, which would then kind of put them more in that direction of where they might make it a requirement or just verbally tell everybody you have to do it this way. You know, I'm sure different municipalities might go about it a little differently, but there's no statutory requirement as of yet.
Hi, thank you. You touched upon recordings for Cook County, and one of them is if you wanted to re-record or record a copy, you have to sign an affidavit. I assume that the parties signing the affidavit will be the parties on the deed. What if you can't get a hold of those people or one's deceased?
That's a good question for the city, thank you. Really, we're asking the city that very same question. They haven't given us any guidance when they put out their memo stating that original signatures by those parties on the deed need to sign.
Thank you.
So we're going case by case to the city with those.
On the city of Chicago for recording, I don't think it was an issue in the past, but the multifamily building registration is now apparently being picked up by the recorder as well as a requirement. And do you run into that with any other municipalities?
Well, other municipalities won't per se have that same requirement of the building registration. So I will be able to answer your question specific to Chicago. Again, others, it's up to them. None of that's captured on the MyDeck system, let's say, because no other municipality outside of Chicago can you purchase their stamps online with. So, but Sue, what have you been seeing with building registration? Have we seen any, to answer a question, I'm sorry, now I lost the question. Was it to?
Counties.
In the color, but in Chicago?
Well, in Chicago, I don't think in the past the recorder's office would block a recording because of a failure to register the building, but I think now it's a question on there that has to be answered, and they are blocking it, is what I'm understanding.
What they're doing is they're allowing you to check those boxes. So when you complete the MyDeck and you check off that you have a water cert that's being prepared either by yourself or the settlement agency, and you check off the zoning, and you check off building registration, you're saying that you have those items. And what's happening is that they're going back and auditing us, and that's where some of our penalties are coming in, because those items, when they check their records, aren't there. So you need to make sure that if you're checking the boxes that you have those items.
If you don't have the building registration?
They'll record, but then that's where the penalty will come back to you.
Just as a follow-up to that question about the Chicago affidavit, we've put in a question to Karen Yarbrough in our legal department about what do you do if, say, one of the grantees is deceased, and we'll follow up with them and see if there's a solution that can be offered.
Thanks, Ralph. Any other questions? Stretch it out.
Yeah. Let me remind you that this is a
Exercise.
minimum continuing legal education seminar, and we're offering an hour of credit, so you have to come up with 15 more minutes of questions. No, seriously, if you have any questions, this is the time.
Really, if you even have any questions about anything else related to recording, Sue is a fountain of information, so whatever else we may have.
I could be wrong on this, but I remember filling out the MyDeck and talking to a live person about the square footage not being a necessary category to be filled in. And so if I don't know the square footage of, say, a condo, I just leave it blank.
What we've been seeing, and so you can correct me afterwards, with Cook County, they have been allowing it to go through, but as the collar counties, most specific, Kane, right? And both Kane and DuPage? I should have let Sue answer. Kane and DuPage are rejecting the MyDecks and kicking them back when there isn't something in those spots. Square footage. So that's why, again, it becomes difficult knowing, okay, Kane wants this, Cook wants that, McHenry wants this, Lake is that. So we do know that there is leeway with Cook, but with the collar counties, we're seeing more and more that they're looking to see that information's filled in. Yes, ma'am. Take your time.
Light, okay. This is a follow-up to Mary's question about you guys purchasing the stamps. She gave the example of Naperville. In my experience, if I want the title company to buy the Naperville stamps, we have to close in Naperville. So let's say we've got a transaction in Naperville and the other attorney's like, well, hey, Bolingbrook's halfway in between, can we close in Bolingbrook? The Bolingbrook title company is not going to drive to Naperville to purchase the stamp. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm pleased to say at First American Title, the way our systems are set up, you can close in any office and you can obtain the very same information, the same services, the same anything for whether you're up in the northern Lake County, you know, the northern tip of, you know, Illinois, down all the way south, you know, Grundy.
Oh, that's
County.
really nice.
We are all over. As a matter of fact, on a little side note, it works well even if you as an attorney have a closing, let's say in Naperville, but you want to get to your next closing in Bolingbrook, again, with First American, and maybe we couldn't fund right away. We're waiting for that funding authorization. Maybe somebody's wire hasn't yet hit the account. We can have your check available for you in any of our offices once we're able to fund. So, or if you have earnest money you need to drop off for a closing this afternoon, let's say down in Grundy, but you're up in McHenry, you could, working with any First American office here in Chicago Metro is like working with your closing office. So we're set up that way. Mary. Hold on, microphone's coming. Exercise.
I've had a problem with the title company where we've had to close and we've changed the location. We were going to close in Rolling Meadows and then the other side wanted to close in on Toohey and on Higgins Road. And the one closing, if the funds were fired or wired in Rolling Meadows, that was a different bank than the funds coming to the other office. And I don't know if that's a problem with other title companies or your title company. Do you have different?
It all depends I will say that is going to be specific to every title company and how their banking is set up, how their reconciliation systems are set up. I know that in today's technology, it's easy to wire. So I'd like to think that the one title company could easily wire the money to another if they needed to. Again, at First American, that's a non-issue for us. The way we've set up our system is that, again, you're closing one office to another, it's all the same. The only time that we ever potentially, no, even with, I was going to say HUD Buyer Select becomes a little more difficult sometimes because you've got to match it up to a closing location. But even there at First American, we're under one, so one ID number with HUD. So in all instances, as a matter of fact, we've had closings mid-closing. We started the closing in the morning, but we knew another package was coming in the afternoon. But again, it's more the attorneys I'm juggling, or maybe we've even seen where borrowers or sellers, it's like, I got to get back to work and I'm going to be here. We finish closings in other offices. It's the same for us. Our systems help us because of the way they're built, and again, all the other technology we have that we're able to communicate internally. That you could start in one and finish in the other, and it's all the same.
But if the client wires to the wrong.
For us, it's all one bank account. Yeah, the question was, but what if they wired to the wrong? There is no wrong. As a matter of fact, the way First American, you could wire anywhere in our country. We've had people inadvertently, property was in Wisconsin, but they were signing in Illinois, so they thought that, they called the Illinois office for wiring instructions versus, let's say, our Wisconsin office. Doesn't matter. We can internally, we can do what we need to do. We will not delay a closing for that, as long as we know the money is with First American as the company. Absolutely. And that can be challenging. Absolutely. We have enough hardships today. We're trying to eliminate wherever we can. But great questions. Anything else come to mind?
Sorry, we had a situation where the water bill was at closing, it was read by the closer, and then a few hours later it changed. So what happens in a situation like that when it says paid and then the actual bill comes through, let's say that evening or early in the morning?
Are you talking specific to Chicago or just
Yes,
in?
no,
Yeah,
Chicago.
Yeah, that really will come down to what is that title company's practice then after the fact. At First American, we want to avoid that situation, which is why Sue graciously every day is calling for those balances that morning, and we are literally paying that balance as soon as we fund, because we don't want to see that change happen. It could be very disrupting. And unfortunately, our clients, the buyers and sellers, they don't know the industry the way we all do, right? So in the end, they just think that in the end, somebody maybe made an error, or there was some kind of, something wasn't followed through that should have been, not understanding that really we're all at the mercy of the city on this. So that's how we get around that. I can't say for other title companies, and you'd have to ask each one specifically how they handle it. I would imagine some might choose to absorb that, and others might choose to try to obtain those monies from your client, from you. I'm not sure. Oh, Sue wanted to add it to that.
I just want to mention that even though we update them every morning, and it's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times, there have been times at closing when we say, okay, we're ready to pay it, it has gone up a few dollars. So again, we are, it's not our system, it's a city system. And if they do an upgrade or something or an update in between the time that we update it and the closing, that's where an amount may change. I'm not sure of your scenario. I was trying to figure it out, but I think that may have been the case, or they just didn't pay it at closing.
Thanks, Sue. Let me start back here, and then we'll work around.
We are hearing more and more concerns about the wiring instructions being sent just via email like they used to be. Does First Am have a policy about that, or is the way wiring instructions sent out still determined on an office by office basis?
Well, at First American, it's our first of all, we keep our wiring instructions on our website, so it makes it very easy for anyone to just get them from there. We do also have them on our branch listing if anybody's, again, especially as attorneys, are welcome to obtain that from Kathy. Our wiring instructions don't change. I mean, title companies' wiring instructions, it's super rare they change. So the biggest and best thing, if I could ask everyone today, share with your offices the moment you ever see anything ever revised, changed. In 90% of all the fraud that we've come across directly, or that I've heard about it within the industry and working with the Illinois Land Title Association and other organizations, it's almost always, like I said, 90% of those situations was because something changed.
Let me just add to that one of the things that I'll be covering in my cybersecurity discussion is a real basic thing for you. Everybody has a signature on your email, has the name of your law office, some contact information, probably has the IRS required disclaimer about it can't be used for, adjusting taxes, all that sort of thing. Add something saying, in my sense, essentially, this office very seldom sends out wire instructions, but we never send out revised wire instructions, okay? So there's something right there every time you send out an email so somebody sees that, and we hopefully sensitize people to the fact that if there's something coming to them that says revised, they should be very cautious.
Biggest red flag out there. But to answer then more specific to your question, at First American, it is our practice to send wiring instructions as a secure email, because we want to drive you nuts, of course, and make you click on an extra link and put in an extra password. Yes, that's our intent. No, I'm kidding. I hate knowing that we feel we're protecting you better by encrypting it, that everybody needs to go through that extra step. But again, by sending it securely, if a fraudster actually got into your email, again, without knowing your password, they couldn't open that and then change it on you. That's why we send securely. We do have customers that say, I just can't open your secure email. It's just difficult. 2 things. Number 1, we'll send it unsecured if you really want it that way. We're not trying to be difficult. We're really just hoping to protect everyone. The other part is, and again, feel free to reach out to Kathy, if you do work or enough work that you'd be interested, there is what's called TLS. I believe it's Transport Layered Security. It's a special encryption between email. I'm not an IT person, so don't quote me on this, please. Turn off those cameras. No, but it's a special connection between email domains. like the firstam.com or your generically the gmail.coms, but there's what they call this TLS connection, which by itself is an encrypted delivery system. So if you're interested, and you could reach out to your other title companies to see if they have this as well, but Kathy can easily make sure with our IT team that we have TLS connection between your email domain and ours. And then this way, whether we actually, whether it appears we've encrypted the email or not, it will always be encrypted. So you might, in those instances, you might not have to get that extra click on this to open it up and go through that login and password. The acronym known in the IT industry is TLS. So, but reach out to Kathy. She'll just ask for your email address so she knows what your email domain is, and then she'll get that set up so that then that encrypted communication exists.
In your experience, and I was interested in the other attorneys, we always have the choice of putting the mail to return the deed to our office or to directly to the buyer. Same thing with the owner's policy. What is the best practice, and what do most people do?
What do you see, Sue? What do you see mostly when you're looking at deeds?
Well, you would put that information on the deed where it says mail to. Because the team that's mailing them out, that's where they're going to send everything.
But what are you seeing? What are you seeing more often? What are most attorneys putting it back to their office or to their client?
That's a 50-50. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And it's whatever your preference is going to be. I would say what I have seen in the industry, again, more and more of us are issuing the owner's policies at the closing table. So your client's getting it at the closing table. It's up to you to decide within your practice if you feel it's necessary that you see the original deed before you send it to your client. The good thing is, again, public records, a lot of our counties, including Cook, actually have public online systems that you can look for copies of recorded documents. So I don't know if it's as necessary as it was, let's say, 15, 20 years ago when this kind of technology didn't exist like it does today. But that's your practice. Yes.
Just sort of a follow-up to Mary's question, because I usually have the deed come to me. I like to make a copy of the recording stamp on it and then put it in the file. But now with e-recording or whatever you're getting, you maintain a digital copy of that deed. Is there a way on a routine basis to just get the title companies to forward that? I'd be just as happy to send the deed direct to the client as long as I got a copy.
I mean,
and Cook County is, yeah, that's fine to do that, but for most of us who don't have accounts, it's not even the $4.50. It's just a pain to have to click through that
website.
And to get the copy of the deed.
The one thing, and Sue, maybe you can clarify for me. I know we can go into My Deck, and My Deck will give the recording information right there. And again, if you were the person that started the My Deck, you will always be able to see the status of the My Deck, so you'll be able to see the recording information there. But can you also see a copy of the actual recorded deed there? No, just the document number. I'll definitely bring it up at First American to see what our options are. Unfortunately, it is, again, another step we're adding to that process. But it's definitely a great thought, and I'll see what we can do there.
This is a little off topic maybe, but I just wanted to ask both you and Ralph if you are going to start tailoring seminars to one of these two categories that we have to satisfy for our ethical MCLE responsibility, being diversity and inclusion, and the other one being mental health or substance abuse. I think it starts with this new reporting. Yes.
So glad you asked that question. If you were at the last meeting, we talked about that new amendment to the rule with regard to professional MCLE. Illinois, to its credit, is one of the few jurisdictions that encourages having MCLE in the areas of substance abuse, mental health, because they realize that that's really critical to the success of a practitioner and having a successful practice. One of the reasons that we developed this mentoring program is that another one of the areas that's addressed in that amendment is that, like, I think it's a 6-month mentoring, long-term mentoring program with the Committee on Professionalism of the Illinois Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. And that's why we've asked Melanie Leonard, one of our new board members, to be coordinating that mentoring program. And it's going to be a long-term program which will satisfy these new requirements. As far as meetings, programs, presentations that focus on substance abuse, mental health, I frankly have not come to the conclusion that that's something that we need to do. However, we want to be responsive to the needs and interests of our membership, and if there were a desire to have that kind of a program, we're open to suggestion on topics, speakers, issues. We'd be glad to look into that.
And I would say the same with First American. I know we have separate MCLE classes we offer online monthly. I know, as a matter of fact, this coming week we're doing one on entities and what documentation is required for signing purposes. And next month we're doing one on elder abuse. Speaking of, and then we do have one on diversity. I don't know if it's going to meet all of the criteria as it's required, because I know some of the criteria for MCLE on ethics versus general is a little different. But you're welcome to reach out to Kathy if you wanted more information on behalf of us as well.
When they're talking about mental health or substance abuse, are they talking about the mental health or substance abuse by the attorney? And then is the same true for diversity? What is the focus of the diversity issue?
This is continuing legal education for attorneys to satisfy the requirements and make sure that they have the number of hours in these areas. So yes, I would presume to encourage attorneys to be aware of diversity issues, to consider issues of diversity in hiring in medium to large size firms. So that would be my understanding of the focus. Yes?
The name of the website and the name of the group is escaping me, but there is a group that has CLEs on this already because I've watched them. There are some on substance abuse. There's one specifically on diversity and how older attorneys and younger attorneys communicate and the differences between the younger attorneys and how to communicate with them if you're an older attorney used to doing things one way or another. I'll get the website and let you know, but they're already on. There's a few that are already on there, and they're very good.
And is it free?
Yes, they're free. So maybe the MCLE website will also, you can click on your parameters when you want to do an MCLE, and you can put in that you want it for free, you want it as an ethics, so maybe those will start popping up that way too. But I'll check and let you know.
So you're going to give me that website, right? Please do. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
I need you to hold it.
Go back to the My Deck. They're requiring you to record the deed before the closing has taken place.
No, we still close, we still disperse, and then we record. That's why the city is very graciously giving us 7 calendar days to make sure we purchase that stamp, because they know that we're going to disperse before we record.
All right, so it's 9:30. We only have time for another hour of questions. No, seriously, a couple of more questions.
I
and then
can
we're
keep
gonna wrap it
talking
up.
on other topics.
I know you can, Melissa.
I could have been more extensive. I just figured we were looking at an overview on some of the challenges and on some of these bigger cities that we all come across. But I'd like to thank everyone.
Well, before we lose our audience, I'm going to give you a certificate of appreciation. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're a sweetheart. Thanks very much to Moitza and Sue Nunnally. Are you going to provide email addresses, or is it just the Chicago?
We can provide yours as well.
Why don't you do that? Yeah.
If you'd like, I'm going to start with mine. It's a little longer. It's M as in Mary, Actually, you know what? You could just reach out to Kathy. Kathy has our email addresses. To make it easier for everyone, you could just reach out to Kathy. She'll get your email address. She can then get you our email addresses.
Would
instead of
it
making
be
everybody
okay with
write.
you if I posted your PowerPoint on our website now?
I sent it to you this morning.
God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Please give us
Thank
suggestions.
you. And I will be
on
around if you have
topics.
any other questions.
Yes.